Hi, I'm Rich Orlowski from New Lenox Channel 6, and I'm here with two very important gentlemen that started an organization around here, and it's called HERO. And I'm here with Brian Kirk and John Roberts. Brian, John, thanks for coming here tonight.
Thank you for having us.
And can you tell us what HERO is and what it stands for?
HERO stands for the Heroin Epidemic Relief Organization, which was started in actually right after I lost my son to a heroin overdose. That was in 2009, April 3rd of 2009. Matthew Kirk, which was my son, lost his life to a heroin overdose. And not long after I lost my son, John lost his son about 4 or 5 months later in September of 2009.
And what brings me is that, unfortunately, I lost my son back in 2017. So that's how I got to meet you guys. And the first time I met you or heard about HERO was actually from the New Lenox Police Department giving me a card. And then there was an event here in out in Romeoville where I met, actually, I believe I met you at that event. And so could you tell us a little bit about what HERO is doing? And
well, the event that you met myself and HERO at was actually our annual event that we have out in Romeoville at the Athletic Center. We have an annual event where we have speakers from the state, and we do a lot of interviews with a lot of the politicians, James Glasgow, Will County State's Attorney, Larry Walsh, the executive from the Executive Office of Will County, and we invite everybody to come out to this. It covers a different topic each year. We've had upwards of 700 people attend this event, and this last one was a very popular one. We were up around 400, 450 people at this event, and it touches on all the things that HERO's working on, and it touches, basically there's a theme for it every year. Offhand, I don't remember what the theme was this past one, but the new one will be coming up probably again in May of 2019.
okay. And could you tell us a little bit more about HERO and what you're trying to do in this community, and what's probably a lot of people don't understand what's going on in the southwest suburbs around here?
Brian and I found out the hard way, so did you, Rich, after suffering a loss like that. But the first time we held an event, the HERO inaugural event, was held in 2010. And then I give all the credit to Brian. He called me one day and said, John, I don't care. I mean, we've got to warn our neighbors and our friends in this community before it happens to their family. And so we held that event. Now we've held it 8 years. But that first year, 700 people showed up. And that told us that, wow, not that we were a success, but that's how bad this problem is. So we remain true to that focus since we started. It's always been about families and how it tears families apart, how it rips communities apart. So our first goal was community awareness, and then our next effort was grief support. It's devastating what it's done to my family and Brian's family, and you're going to carry that grief the rest of your life. So we meet twice a month here in the community, and anybody who suffered a loss of a loved one to an overdose can come. Also in this community, every week, we have a meeting for family support for those who are fighting and struggling to save a loved one from their addiction. And we found both of those to be very powerful. One last thing I'd like to mention, Brian mentioned the politicians coming out. We actually got involved in changing the drug laws and policies of our local government, our state government, our national government. We fought on several different levels. We've helped write and pass legislation. The first one was the Good Samaritan Bill back in 2010, where kids watching a loved one or a friend die could pick up the phone and call 911 and get help. So but we've supported other initiatives. Another one that's very important that we do with our family support, I mean, every time a new family comes to our meetings, if they are fighting an active heroin addiction or opioid addiction, meaning painkillers, we train them before they leave in how to administer naloxone. It's an amazing antidote that works within minutes and has saved thousands and thousands of lives. And the Centers for Disease Control announced the 2017 data 4 days ago. In this great nation of ours, we lost 72,000 people to drug overdose,
Oh, wow.
and 50,000 of them were due to heroin and opioids and fentanyl. So we're doing what we can to reverse this epidemic, and we're fighting on several fronts, and it's keeping us busy. We're both retired, but you know, it's a labor of love. We're fighting for families, and we're going to keep it up.
And one of the things about heroin, when you say heroin, you think of somebody, your first is a negative image that you have been programmed to over watching, you know, a lot of TV shows and stuff of a heroin addict. Now, that isn't necessarily true, and it's not necessarily what, like when somebody else sees somebody and you say heroin, they think of something really negative, not someone like our kids, which
Correct.
we're very caring people and we're very part of the community, and they weren't like laying out in the street anywhere. So there's a little stigma involved in what heroin is and what actually is what it's being cut with, and it's just a big stigma, which it makes it hard for people who are dealing with it to come forward.
We have actually Brian has it, we just found it, but we had borrowed it from somebody. It's a small poster with about 500 pictures on it, and I wish I had it with me today to show you and the viewing audience, but it's called The New Face of Heroin. These are not the dregs of society living under a viaduct. These are our kids. The amount of hard drugs coming into our country, mostly across our southern border, is truly frightening, and it's killing many, many kids. These are like our kids. I'm no longer surprised when I see in the news that some celebrity has died from it, because there's so much of it coming in. People are trying these, you know, I hate these words. Here, try this. Somebody will introduce this to a person, maybe not even tell them what it is, and they try it, and it's so potent, so powerful. There's so many drugs coming in, they don't have to cut it as much anymore. They're selling it at a much more lethal dose, and as a result, you know, many, many people are dying. So we've got quite a fight on our hands there. I'm afraid what the next few years hold if this nation doesn't rise up against this epidemic and fight it.
Now, do you see like the community stepping up and doing something around here, around the suburbs here?
Yes, here in New Lenox, they've really stepped up. There's actually a task force within the Safe Communities organization here in New Lenox that Dan Martin runs. We actually have a task force for the prescription overdoses and the heroin overdoses. So it's like a task force that we have going on underneath the Safe Communities organization of New Lenox. And I know coming up here in August 30th, there is going to be an event here on August 30th for Your Light Still Shines, which is in remembrance of all the people, including our sons, who passed away from overdoses.
Now, you guys show up at a lot of community events throughout the year, because I've seen there's a van out here, a trailer, that shows someone's bedroom.
It was, I was there Saturday. I was actually in a neighboring community for several hours at 123rd and Pulaski at a Walgreens. But Brian and I have been out all summer. We haven't had too many weekends off this summer, but again, we're fighting an epidemic. But the trailer is called the In Plain Sight trailer, and parents don't realize the nature and scope of this problem and how to recognize it. So this trailer was an idea we borrowed from Grundy County, and it's very successful. We go all over northern Illinois, but it's a mock-up of a teenage boy's bedroom. And so it has a bed and a desk and a dresser and an end table, but all the accoutrements you would find in a teenage boy's bedroom. In addition, we have in plain sight various things that suggest possible substance abuse. And it's educational for the parents. You can't go in the trailer if you're 18, but we show parents how easy it is for the kids to hide various substances and hard drugs right in plain sight in their bedroom, and we encourage parents. Well, I call it, you have to do the sex talk with your kids. I mean, we all dread that day, but now you have to do the drug talk with your kids, and you have to ask them, are the kids in this community using drugs? Have you ever been tempted or asked to try something? It opens the door for parents to talk to people. The thing I also ask families to do is go to your local school district and ask them, what type of drug education program is this school offering to help me protect my kids? And that's very important. I'd like to echo what Brian said. New Lenox is a model community. The things that they do, the work we've done together, not just for this upcoming event, but for years, Rich, we've been doing this with New Lenox, and I wish all communities would do that. That's how we're going to beat this epidemic. I mean, the drug education at home, in school, and communities fighting back. That event Saturday was Walgreens, and they, because they're distributing painkillers, they came out to say what they're doing to help stop the epidemic. So, that's what we need.
Okay. Now, we touched on earlier, like the support groups. Can you elaborate? Like, you have a grief support group, and then you have a support group for families dealing with.
Yes, the grief support group basically covers anybody that lost a loved one to a substance overdose, whether it be alcohol, drugs, etc. That meets twice a month. I believe it's the first and third Tuesday of every month at Orland Park at the Calvary Church. So that's open to anyone who wants to attend. It's free of charge. There's no charges at all in anything that Hero does. Then the family support group meets at Linkaway Christian Church on Illinois Highway, I think it is, Joliet Highway or Illinois Highway. And that meets every Tuesday from 7 to 8:30. And we have a counselor every other meeting. And then also what we have going on there is also an HA group meeting there. Now, Hero cannot be part of the HA group, but there is an HA group, which is Heroin Anonymous group there. It actually got started at that church there, and we started off with about 5 people in HA, and now it's up to about 85. So there's an awful lot of people attending the HA group, and what we like to do is that group starts at 8:15, which is 15 minutes after our family support group starts, and then it ends at 8:15. Starts at 7:15, ends at 8:15, and then we bring a couple of the HA people in our family support group in case parents want to talk to these kids to try and understand what's going on with their own kids.
Okay. And is there something you like to tell people about how addiction is really a disease as opposed to something, that's something that I hear a lot, is that it's a disease, and you have to treat it like a disease rather than as somebody might be, a criminal because they do drugs. But I could tell you that they probably do not want to do drugs.
This is true. This is very true. I know a lot of times we have a lot of people out there that don't want to look at this as a brain disease, but that's what they have come down to. The medical professionals have finally declared that it's a brain disease. Addiction in general is a brain disease. I think it helps to get rid of some of the stigma when you call it a disease. The only problem is there's still a lot of the population out there that believe it's got nothing to do but willpower. They should have never picked it up and started. It's their fault. But the professionals have said, no, that's not true. It is actually a brain disease.
All addiction. I mean, there's so much research being done now, and thankfully, because it's mystifying. It was to us 10 years ago, but the amount of research that's been done. But, it is a brain disease. Anybody who's ever had a cigarette and then continue to smoke for maybe all their life, even though they knew that it may cause heart disease and lung cancer, that's addiction. The person who had one drink, but then had another drink, and there are many addictions out there, and the problem with this one is where smoking may take 40 years to kill you. Heroin. We've met families at grief support. One mother we'll never forget who child had never tried anything, smoking, drink, or anything. Her best friend said, here, try this. And she was tempted and fell to the temptation and smoked a pipe. It was heroin. That young lady at the age of 18 died that night. So I will never forget the story. As the mother said afterwards, I've thought about suicide, but I can't do it. I have a husband and a son to take care of. So I often tell that story at high schools to remind kids just how dangerous it is, how devastating it is to their family. I know Brian and I will never forget that night, but that was an example of just one-time use. But the people who try things and like it, I mean, I tried cherry pie, and it's been my favorite pie all of my life. It's human nature. If you try something and you get some kick out of it, you're going to try it again. And many, many people fall to the disease of addiction. And as a nation, we have to realize there are many problems we are facing as a result of substance abuse, and we have to fight it. And in particular, and that's the purpose of that story, heroin is now so powerful. And the things they're putting in it, there's a drug called fentanyl. It's a synthetic opioid, or heroin, if you will. It's 80 to 100 times stronger than a dose of heroin. And if the drug dealers who are mixing it don't mix it properly, which it seems like most don't, it can kill you whether it's the first time or the 100th time you've used it. So it's a very, very serious problem. We have to fight addiction and fight this. That's why we came up with the name HERO. It's an epidemic. We're fighting a disease.
Is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I like the thing that you had brought up, and John had touched base on it about that originally that somebody was doing heroin was from the dregs of society or a lower class individual, which is not the case. At one time, we actually had a young gentleman on our HERO board who was actually a person in recovery from heroin, and he was actually the Lockport High School class president in one of the years at Lockport. So it's kind of interesting to show people out there that these kids are not bad kids. They got caught up in something they should have never been involved in to begin with, and they're all actually good kids. Now we're actually at the stage where it's not just kids that are passing away. We're talking about people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s overdosing from opioids. So. Also, the other thing we wanted to touch on also was that a lot of people are under the assumption that, including myself, that once you send your kid away, you put them in rehab for a while, you think that, well, it's like, he broke his arm, you put it in a cast, it's going to heal, it's going to be over with. It's not the case when you're an addict addicted to heroin or fentanyl. There could be multiple rehabs, sometimes as many as 10 to 15 rehabs. So if you don't have the proper insurance or good enough insurance, you're talking anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 every time your child goes into rehab. It's basically a family disease, and it destroys families.
Affects all.
And, I'd like to add too that I always do this to Brian. He's the first hero. You may recall my story where he called and said, John, I want to go out right down the main street of our community and tell everybody about this, despite the stigma and everything. But just before we held our first event, newspapers interviewed us, and they called us the two dads. Well, the reason I bring that up is that we're just two dads, but we found a way. I mean, next year will be our 10th anniversary. We found a way to fight this epidemic. Well, speaking with you today, Rich, I've said we have got, that means everybody. If two dads can find ways to fight it like we have, I always say everybody can do something to help save our kids. What we're doing today, filming this interview here in the village of New Lenox, is very important. It's things like this that are going to make the difference, and we will see someday this epidemic begin to wane. Right now the numbers are climbing, but if everybody will embrace those words, like Brian, when he called me that day, I said, let's do it. And we've been doing it together for almost 10 years, but everybody can do something to help. Saturday, Walgreens decided they were going to help. But we get contacted all the time by people who ask us to bring our trailer out. But everybody who joins, and that's what this motto is about, is be a hero. Help save lives. Help fight this epidemic. That's what heroes do. I'm not saying Brian and I are. I'm just saying that you find a way to fight back against this. And that is the way we will win the war on drugs. We will see this epidemic someday fade into history. I mean, that's what I'm working for, and Brian's working for, and you, all of us, should get behind this. But in the next couple of years, I'm afraid we're going to eclipse 1 million people in this nation will have died from a drug overdose. And when our boys lost, there was 28, almost 29,000 deaths in 2009. The CDC just told us 72,000. That's more than doubled. The numbers are climbing. I'm going to keep fighting alongside Brian, or at Brian's side. We're going to fight and fight and fight. We're going to see those numbers come down, but everybody can do something to help. If you'd like to help, you can reach us at theherofoundation.org. And whether volunteer, if you'd like to volunteer to help us at an event, or while working on the trailer, or even making a donation. 99.2% of all donations we receive goes right back into Hero programs. We've never been paid, and nor will we. It's about the work we do and about saving lives.
All right. All right, thank you guys. Thanks for joining us here on Channel 6. Thanks for all what you're doing out here in the community. And it takes a lot of guts to people talk about taking action. You guys actually took action, and that's really appreciated. I'm sorry that the circumstances around taking the actions aren't ideal, but thanks for what you're doing around here.
Well, thank you for doing your part.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rich. This really means a lot to us and to the families you're helping to protect. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. This is, once again, Rich Olowski for New Lenox, Channel 6.